Hey guys, Mike here from Lunch Money Comics with kind of a cool video for you. So it is yard sale season here in New England. I've been hitting them pretty hard, and I've been having some okay luck. Although most of the time it misses, I do get hits every once in a while and find comic books. Originally, I was going to kind of put a whole bunch of smaller videos together showing like all of my days out and about, and then I decided, hey, why don't I just do a montage of all the best things I found? You know, why show all of you guys the misses when I can show you just the hits? So that's what this video is. This is over 3 different days of yard sailing. And you see this first location, yeah, this is a pretty good one. I'd actually been to this house in the past. I think these people buy kind of like old storage units because they always have an eclectic mix of stuff that, well, looks like they got it out of a storage unit. And they have had comic books in the past, although the last time I was here, I wasn't early enough and I missed some good stuff. Well, here I was bright and early. There was actually one other comic book hunter I recognized from the area. But you see, yeah, right now on these this table, there were long boxes, but there were a lot of these cardboard boxes of unbagged, unboarded, mostly Marvel comic books. Now, first things first, guys, I forgot my camera mount on this day. Of course I did. I've been forgetting it a lot lately, which makes filming this really difficult. It's hard enough when you're looking in a long box. It's extraordinarily hard when they're in a flat box and you're going through left-handed. I am a righty. So here I am just roughly going through them quickly. You get to give you guys a sense of really what's in there. I just want to point out once again, I always look at every book. I ended up putting my phone away and going through all these one at a time, just so you guys know that. So here's the biggest bummer about this, right? So you see these comic books are in cardboard boxes. Well, the night before, we had some pretty crazy weather go through. We had like sideways rain and stuff, and I don't know where these comic books were. I'm assuming they were under a tent because they weren't soaked. But what happened was the table got wet and the water wicked up through the cardboard box you see here into the lowest comic books. And as you're about to see, I found some good ones that unfortunately were quite water damaged. Even the ones that were on top here, even though it was a nice day, the wind was blowing and like rain was coming off the trees and soaking a lot of the books. That was kind of a bummer. I had to be very careful in sort of, which books I pulled out and make sure I inspected them. But you see here, most of these comic books that you see are Marvel. There were some DC mixed in. I think you saw a George Perez Wonder Woman in there. I asked the woman how much she wanted for these. They were 50 cents each, except for this box, which were trade paperbacks. These were $5 each. Now, I love cheap trade paperbacks, especially if it's a story I've been wanting to read or one I already like. I've already read it. I just want to have it encapsulated in one book. And so I was definitely interested in peeking. There were some interesting ones, like this Deadpool versus Old Man Logan. Interesting book. I ended up not getting it. Instead, I opted for this one. This is House of M. Yeah, very famous storyline revolving around the Scarlet Witch. I love the storyline. Worth picking up. Here I am now going through these long boxes. Again, guys, you're going to see me skipping lots at a time. Trust me, I went through every single one of them one at a time. And most of the stuff in these boxes was the same stuff you see from the 90s that no one really wants anymore. This is stuff we find, right, when people clear out storage units. There were these hobby magazines from Japan. And this box here was interesting, lots of Image, but there were some DC and Marvel mixed in. Guys, I don't want to insult all these, off-brand comic books from the 90s. Some of these had great art and great stories, absolutely. They're just not books that I tend to collect, right? Again, this stuff's ubiquitous when you find these old collections of stuff that people just don't want anymore. They've already been picked through. That's sort of a clear sign there's not much good in there. So I ended up having far more luck in the boxes that you saw in the beginning that were not bagged and boarded, which again, too bad because a lot of them were kind of damaged. Case in point. So this is Wolverine Origins number 10. This is a variant cover. This is a pretty big key, actually, which we'll talk about in a little bit. But this one was on the bottom of one of those cardboard boxes, and of all the hundreds of books here, this one was by far the wettest. It was soaked through. What a bummer, because it's a kind of a pretty cool book, guys, featuring the first appearance of a big character. But lots of Wolverine, like I said, and this is a great one. This is the first appearance and first storyline of Old Man Logan. Very cool character. I think a lot of people know about these days. So I ended up with a pretty good little stack of comic books at a great price. Although I said I was cutting out a lot of the footage for you guys, it was worth showing kind of some of the stuff at this tag sale because, like I said, this person clears out storage units, and whenever they do that, you find tons of toys, and a lot of toys tend to be comic book related. So you see here, just the stuff I bump into all the time. Lots of Marvel and DC stuff, Star Wars stuff, again, modern Star Wars stuff. Lots of Star Trek, actually. I know nothing about Star Trek toys. Let me know down in the comments if you saw anything good right then. Some cool Iron Man tins. And because I like, vintage toys, guys, it's always worth looking. I might find something from my youth. Again, I find modern stuff like this all the time. I like X-Men. I wasn't really interested in this right here. I did find a couple of older toys you'll see right here. Some Generation X toys, Jubilee right there. That's kind of fun. I remember those from when I was a kid. So here's a toy you'd think I would have jumped on in a heartbeat. This is a bobblehead Nightcrawler from the X2 movie. Unfortunately, it was so wet the decals were literally falling off. It wasn't worth picking up for that, guys. So I ended up with a pretty good little stack of comics, but this is the first stop on this day, and I ended up hitting something like, I'm not joking, 50 yard sales, because a lot of towns were having town-wide yard sales or neighborhood-wide yard sales like this one. So this is a neighborhood in a town near where I live, and they had, 30, 40 yard sales in this neighborhood. And again, guys, I went to every single one of them. I'm not going to show you all the footage. But, even when you go and you don't have the best luck, you don't find a ton of comic books, it's amazing how many times you find like one or two. And it's always worth asking. So I saw this person had lots of sport cards. And for some reason, when I see sport card people, they also tend to collect comic books. I asked, hey, do you have comic books? They said, yeah, we have exactly two. Yeah, you see these two Superman comics from the 90s, Death of Superman. I said, you don't have any more? They said, nope, that is all they have. So it's worth asking, guys. You never know. So this is a different day entirely. This stop right here was a woman who used to sell like in, consignment shops and indoor flea markets and recently lost her spot. So she put all her stuff in storage units and has been clearing them out on the weekends to sell in her driveway with tents. Almost like a little mini flea market. It's kind of cool. But she did say she had comic books, so I went into the garage, and sure enough, guys, oh boy, were there comic books. There was probably 10 long boxes plus some short boxes of comic books. She actually said they belonged to her late husband. She bagged and boarded almost all of them herself, and she priced them out. Now, here's the thing. She kept saying to me, kind of unprompted, I know what I have. I know what they're worth. Don't try talking me down, which I thought was interesting. Okay, I decided to go through these comic book boxes, and honestly, guys, these books weren't worth that much. A lot of this stuff was independent. In fact, you could probably make one long box that held all the DC and Marvel. All this stuff is independent stuff I'd never even heard of before. Lots of stuff in the 90s and 2000s. Again, not saying it's bad stuff, just not stuff that I'm into. She said one other person told her that her books are 50-cent books, and she got mad about it. So as I'm looking at these guys, my thought was, yeah, these are 50-cent books, if not quarter bin books. But I didn't want to insult her, of course. She seemed like a very nice lady. So we talked for a little bit. I knew, if I did find some books I wanted, if I want to get a good price on them, I had to not be rude, of course. And you see here, like in the first couple boxes, this is all the DC and Marvel I got. That was it. That's all I found. But luckily, one of the last boxes I found was full of X-Men books. This is my favorite. Not only X-Men, but a lot of stuff I need for my X-Men runs. A lot of these were actually in pretty good shape. She did a great job bagging and boarding these. Some of them, not so much. You could definitely tell they were beat up, which you'll see in a second. But lots of Ultimate X-Men, which I don't really collect, or other X-Men titles that I already have, like Extreme X-Men. I have most of those. But then I found these classic X-Men, which I really like, but she was asking way too much for these, and she was not really coming down. She thought they were old, and they were worth a lot of money. I had to pass. Luckily, at the end, I did find enough comic books that I needed for my runs that was worth getting if I can negotiate a good price. You see here, though, guys, this comic book I really needed, but there was a sticker on the book. That's not on the back. That's on the book, and she was asking like $6 for it. Obviously, I couldn't do that, right? So I ended up finally coming to a deal for all of these. I did find exactly one amazing Spider-Man comic. She was asking 10. Maybe I felt a little pity. I ended up buying all these books for a little bit more than I should have paid. And here's my last day. I was out and about with actually a guy who's been on my channel. His name is Andy. He's the guy I helped sell his whole collection. I got a Hulk 181 from him. Yeah, he loves hanging out and going to flea markets and yard sales. We hang out together. And this place had lots of, antiques. I got this, one of these planes from my brother-in-law who collects them. And, this is actually a pretty cool little barn because they had mostly antiques, which I like. But Andy knows what I like. And he was kind of on the hunt for comic book related things. And he was great at sniffing them out. He's finding comic book stuff everywhere. It's great to have a +1, guys, when you're hitting these yard sales. You get, twice the amount of eyes on things. He found some more. He found this pretty cool, like Batman Forever comic book from the movie still in the package. Kind of neat. But right when I was about to give up hope, I did find this little bag of what I thought was just Archie comics. And in between, I did find this Jungle Action with a famous John Byrne cover of the Black Panther, and I'm getting it for an okay price. So that was a long day when I was with Andy, and although I didn't find many comic books, I found lots of other interesting things I think are relevant to this video. I found sport cars. Hey, Daisuke Matsuzaka for you Red Sox fans out there. When you see old bins of vintage toys, guys, like you see here, it's definitely worth going through them. You might find something that's worth it. Most of this stuff was modern, but I did find some comic books. You see an Alf #1 and Indiana Jones. That was all the comic books I found at this place. But the toys, yeah, I found actually 2 carded Space Jam toys from the 90s. I was actually able to get them for less than the sticker price you see there, $2. I'll tell you why that's relevant in a minute. In our last stop of the day, I found this guy who was selling tons of die-cast cars. Now, I'm not into die-cast cars, but I have friends who are. People give me lists of things they're looking for all the time. But this guy also had some carded toys. You see here, he has some Ghostbuster toys. These look vintage. They're actually from 2020. I was able to get them for a great price, and I was actually able to trade them for comic books. I'll tell you that story and more, show you everything I got back in the basement. So there you go. That was my bit of a montage video of 3 different days hunting for comic books at local yard sales. And yeah, I ended up with quite a few I'm excited to show you. The thing is this, guys, I hear it down in the comments a lot. People say how lucky I am that I live in the area. I do. Yeah, big population density, lots of comic book shops, lots of shows. Certainly in the flea market, antique shop department, there are lots. But when it comes to yard sales, I think it's a pretty simple formula. Go to as many as possible. Like I said in the voiceover, over those 3 days, I must have gone to over 50 yard sales over those 3 days, at least. And yeah, you find little comic books here and there, but I ended up with some good piles simply because the sheer amount that I went to was that high. You're bound to find comic books. And of course, I did the research to find, to narrow in on the ones that actually had it. So to those of you that feel like they don't have good luck going out to yard sales, guys, just keep going. Yeah, I went to 50 yard sales, got some pretty good comic books, at some lunch money prices. But if I went to 100 yard sales, I'd find something better. If you go to 200, you might find that really big score. It's all a matter of persistence and keeping with it. Let me know down in the comments if you guys have had good luck going to yard sales. If you ever found any good scores, I'd love to hear everyone's story. That being said, guys, I have a lot of comic books. I got it at a great price. I'm excited to show you. Before I do, if you want to support the channel, head on down, hit that like button, and you can follow me on Instagram under Lunch Money Comics IG. So I'm going to show these comic books in the same order that you saw them in the footage, meaning this first stack was from that first location, which I mentioned is a woman who I think buys out like storage units and estate sales. I've been there in the past. She has these big yard sales and always has cool stuff. I was really excited this time to get a hold of some comic books from her, although, as I mentioned in the footage and as you'll see in a second, the condition left a little bit to be desired. But let's start with a comic book you may not have expected me to pick up, and it is this. This is Usagi Yojimbo number 32 from 1992, and this is a series created by Stan Sakai in the 80s, and it features an anthropomorphic samurai rabbit whose name is not Usagi Yojimbo. No, a lot of people think that his real name is Miyamoto Usagi. Usagi Yojimbo means rabbit bodyguard in Japanese. And yeah, he's like a samurai character who's kind of cool, right? People really like this series, but what I think is most interesting about him is that this is a creator-owned comic book and character, meaning Stan Sakai owns the rights to this. So it was printed on lots of different publishers. This one's Fantagraphics, for instance, but it's been published by lots of different titles. But what's really cool is that this character of Miyamoto has crossed over with other comic book titles a lot, most notably Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. Yeah, some other anthropomorphic animals that do martial arts. Very recently, like this year, he's crossing over with the Power Rangers. So I thought that was super cool, guys. It's a cool character. I've never really read this series, so I'd love to hear from some of you who are more familiar with it. But this particular issue also happens to be a key issue. It's the first appearance of Kitsune, who's a master thief. That means nothing to me. I don't know who Kitsune is. I thought this was a cool cover. I see these books all the time, guys. I'm kind of thinking of getting into them. Again, let me know down in the comments if you guys are more familiar with it. I thought it was definitely worth picking up for 50 cents. Next up, we have the prologue to World War Hulk. Yeah, this is a very cool series which featured the Hulk basically being exiled or banished from Earth by the Illuminati, the smartest guys in the Marvel Universe. He goes off in outer space. The Hulk ends up on Sakaar. Those of you that watch Thor Ragnarok, you know what that is. Comes back to Earth to get his revenge on the Illuminati. Craziness ensues where it's basically Hulk against almost the entire Marvel Universe. So, very cool series here. This is covered by John Romita Jr. Very highly acclaimed series. A lot of people liked. And yeah, I thought it was kind of a cool book. Neat cover. Happy to pick it up for 50 cents. Next up, we have a book I already own, actually. I found out after the fact. This is New X-Men number 143. This is part of the Grant Morrison run. It's from 2003. I simply got this because it features an awesome character of Phantom X. So Phantom X first appeared in the Grant Morrison run in New X-Men number 128. This is a great cover by Chris Bachalo. And I just like the character. Thought it was a cool comic book. Found out I already have it, but this is higher grade than the one I already have. Next up, these kind of go together as a pair. I've talked about this on my channel recently in the past. I won't get into it too much. This is X-Men Deadly Genesis number 1. This is a storyline by Brubaker, which very famously shows off that Professor X is kind of a jerk. There was another team of X-Men characters he basically sent to their death on Krakoa. Before the giant-sized X-Men, of course, Vulcan, who's the youngest Summers brother, comes back to exact his revenge. Pretty cool. Now, I have multiple copies of this first issue. The difference here is that this is a different variant. I have the one that's an homage to Giant-Size X-Men number 1. I have the one that shows Vulcan on the cover, but this is a really cool one featuring Wolverine by Trevor Hairsine. So, cool cover. Didn't have it yet. I also had the second issue right there. You see Vulcan fighting Cyclops. Very cool. I think most of the series was actually in those boxes, and although I own them, I should have just grabbed them all. I don't know why they just put together a series when they're that cheap. Oh well. Next up, guys, you saw there was a ton of Wolverine books, and I have a ton to show you, starting with this. This is Wolverine number 50. I guess this would be volume 3 of Wolverine. This is by Jeff Loeb. It's from 2007. Really cool cover by Simone Bianchi. And the reason I got this is quite simple, guys. You saw most of those books were not bagged and boarded, certainly the ones that were like on the table and they were kind of damp. This one was in the original kind of poly bag right here that it came in with like an ad poster. So it was in good shape. That's why I grabbed it. Not only that, but it's actually a pretty cool wraparound cover of Wolverine fighting Sabretooth. That's it. That's the only reason I got it. It was a cool cover. There's worse reasons to get a comic book, right, guys? But these next 3 are definitely pretty cool ones. You saw them in the footage. Start with this one. This is, once again, Wolverine Volume 3. And this is number 66. And what this is the storyline by Mark Millar, art by Steve McNiven. And this is the first full appearance of Old Man Logan, the older version of Wolverine from an alternate universe in a dystopian world. X-Men do this all the time, right? Where, most of the world's villains have taken over the entire planet. The United States has been divvied up amongst many villains, including actually the Incredible Hulk, Bruce Banner. And we have Wolverine as Old Man Logan sort of wandering this desolate landscape. He's accompanied by a blind Clint Barton Hawkeye. And yeah, I think a lot of people have seen the movie Logan, one of the best X-Men related movies, or superhero movies, period, ever made. Obviously, that's based in large part on this storyline by Mark Millar. So, Old Man Logan, the older alternate version of Logan here, first appeared actually in Fantastic Four 558, also by Mark Millar. But it was sort of a cameo, and it's heavily hinted that he is who he is. Well, this is the first time it's confirmed. This is the first full appearance of Old Man Logan in the beginning of the whole story. And not only did I get the first issue here, I got number 67. The second issue, you see all the superheroes have been killed. They're all on the bottom. And the next issue there, number 68. And honestly, guys, I think most of that storyline was there. Again, in retrospect, as I'm looking at the footage, I was like, why didn't I grab them all? I have not read this series. What was I thinking? Head on down in the comments. Let me know if you've read the Old Man Logan storyline. It's a cool book, guys. I'm happy to pick these up for 50 cents. I think it's a great deal. All right. You saw the trade paperbacks, and I already told you I already got this book, but it's worth talking about this in a little bit more detail. I did pick up this House of M trade paperback. This is 2005 series, which is by Brian Michael Bendis. And it's also, I think, an extra bonus fake newspaper on the back of this. Yeah, this is a really cool pivotal storyline in the early 2000s. And although I've read many separate parts of this, I've never actually read it start to finish. This is, although it was a crossover and there's lots of other, titles that cross into this, this is the main, first 8 issues. And yeah, this basically features Scarlet Witch going crazy. She does that from time to time. Yeah, this takes place in the aftermath of the destruction of Genosha in New X-Men. Now, any of you that watch X-Men 97, you will have seen something very similar, although in the show it was destroyed by Bastion and Mr. Sinister, presumably. In the comic book, it's destroyed by Cassandra Nova. It doesn't really matter. Just know that this starts sort of in the aftermath of that. Scarlet Witch is on destroyed Genosha. Vision is dead, her husband. And because she can change reality, she creates a new one where she has 2 children, 2 boys. And anybody who watched WandaVision knows exactly where this is going. She's changed reality to basically make her own perfect world that she wants to live in because she can't deal with all the horrible things going on. Well, she's changing reality, and the X-Men and the Avengers get together and try to figure out what to do with Wanda because she's dangerous, and some of them decide the only way to deal with her is to get rid of her. So they go to Genosha, and when they confront her, she simply just changes reality again, but this time, instead of changing it just in Genosha, she changes it for everybody, or at least all the Avengers and the X-Men. The entire world changes, and we have an alternate timeline called the House of M, where for a lot of those characters, it's sort of their best dreams have come true, right? Spider-Man is actually married to Gwen Stacy, who did not die, and mutants actually lead the world. They are actually superior over all of the other humans, and they are led by the House of M, which is the House of Magneto, Magneto and his children, Polaris, Scarlet Witch, and Quicksilver, who at the time were still his children. That's kind of been retconned, as well as her children, who weren't really real. So, I'm going to skip a lot of this, guys. Like I said, I know a lot of the story, but I'll just skip to the end because that's sort of the important part. All the characters in the story don't remember the original timeline, except for Wolverine. Wolverine's one that figures out something is not right. He remembers enough. He starts getting all the Avengers and the X-Men to realize what's going on. They confront her again, and at the end of the story, after, they've confronted the House of M, Magneto almost kills Quicksilver, honestly. Scarlet Witch has had enough. She blames Magneto for all the things that have happened because of his love of mutants, and she utters 3 very famous words: no more mutants. There's another big flash of light, and they are transported back to the main 616 timeline, except instead of there being millions of mutants, almost all of them have been depowered. There's only 100 mutants left that keep their powers. And the ramifications of this on the Marvel Universe were huge. I mean, for years later, we had storylines, dealing with the aftermath of this. A lot of notable mutants like Magneto lost their powers. And it was really cool. It was a fun little sandbox to play in for years after this, seminal event. The reason I'm bringing all this up and telling you guys this whole story, yeah, I want to read the whole thing start to finish, but it's also because this was a perfect segue into my next book. Because my next one is the one you saw in the footage, which is kind of a bummer. It's this. So this is Wolverine Origins number 10. This is a series from 2007. And this deals, again, in the aftermath of House of M, because at the end of that storyline, when they get transported back to the main timeline, Wolverine, who his entire life has basically forgotten his past. He's either have been erased from his memory or has been manipulated in some way. He doesn't have reliable memories. He wakes up in the main universe again, and he remembers everything. He remembers his entire past, and this Wolverine Origins is basically him kind of going on like a vengeance quest, right? It's him basically dealing with a lot of things that he now remembers from his past. And it's in this series, quite notably, we are introduced to his son, Daken. Now, Daken first appears as like an infant in the second or third issue of the series. But this issue right here, number 10, is the first time we see him as an adult. He shows up at the end of this book, and which is why this book, because people really like that character quite a bit, people like this book. Now, I know what some of you are saying. You've seen the first appearance of Daken. Normally, Wolverine Origins 10 is a white cover, and it shows Daken's hand with his claw sticking out, like dripping in blood. It's a cool, iconic cover. This is a variant by Soydom. So not nearly as cool of a cover as the other one, although it's a cool cover. You see like a young Wolverine. It's kind of neat. It's not the iconic one everyone knows and loves. That's okay. Still the first appearance of Daken. Of course, the problem here is that although I've dried this out and tried pressing it as much as I could, just flattening with books, it is very warped, guys. It was extremely wet. This absolutely needs like an actual real press. Good thing is, it had been recently sort of dampened, so there's no like molds or anything. I was able to dry it out pretty quickly. Still, guys, pretty cool comic book to find for 50 cents, even though it's in terrible shape. Still happy to get it. So what did I get all these for? I got all of these here for $10. So, which is a little bit less than what she was asking. She kind of rounded down. So that's pretty good. I got a great trade paperback and a whole bunch of comic books for about 50 cents each. Happy to add all these to my collection at a great Lunch Money Comics price. So the second location you saw in the footage, that was the one where a woman had lost her spot at a consignment shop and decided to make her garage and driveway and front yard into like an impromptu flea market. She was a pretty funny lady, to be honest. She was making lots of funny jokes, but as soon as I mentioned the comic books, she got a little defensive. Clearly, people have been kind of like beating her up over prices, and she was very firm on the prices she set. Unfortunately, yeah, not only was there not a lot there that I collect, but I think she was a little bit high. Still, killing with kindness, guys. I was super nice. I knew I might find some comic books that I wanted, and I did end up with a pile. I breathed a sigh of relief when I found the X-Men box, guys, because there were some books in there I actually needed for my X-Men run. So let's start with this one. This is Uncanny X-Men number 325. I already own this book, but this is a much better copy of the one I have. This is like a gatefold that opens up to a cool poster. Thought it was kind of neat. Probably my favorite part, it actually has the original 1995 Flair Marvel annual cards that would have came in the inside the book in the poly bag is right there. So I thought that was really cool. And then a whole bunch of stuff from the Uncanny X-Men run that I'm trying to finish. So this is Uncanny X-Men number 441, and this is written by Chuck Austin. This is the conclusion of the She Lies with Angels storyline. Now, being a longtime Uncanny X-Men reader, I read all these books by Chuck Austin, and in my opinion, he is the worst X-Men writer of all time. Just my opinion. I really didn't like these books. I still read them because I love comic books and I love the X-Men, but I just did not like his take on the characters, so much so that I stopped reading on this storyline, She Lies with Angels. I just said I've had enough of Chuck Austin, and I quit reading Uncanny X-Men for a long time. Silly me, because this is issue 441. Chuck Austin's last issue was 443, and who took over then? Chris Claremont, my favorite X-Men writer. So I quit right at the worst time. So I don't have a lot of these issues, guys, in my run, so I'm trying to fill them in now. So we have Uncanny X-Men number 446. We have number 448. Awesome Logan cover right there. We have number 451. Cool X-23 cover. We have 461. Great Mojo cover. This is completely different. This is Bone number 20, a beloved series by Jeff Smith. I got this because it's different, it's cool, and my kids really like Bone. I have some trade paperbacks they really like. I thought they would enjoy this one. And you guys saw this in the footage. There was one Amazing Spider-Man in there. I'm guessing all the rest got picked out already. This is in really poor shape, like really beat up. It's got a subscription crease on it, color breaks. It's not really a key issue. She was asking like $10 for it. Still, it's Amazing Spider-Man. It's Bronze Age. It's a Romita cover. Come on, can't go wrong. So I took these books out right here, guys. And again, she has prices on the back like $10, $6, $5. Not really worth that. And she added them up and she goes, how's $30? I didn't want to be rude, so all I did is I said, no, I'm just going to pass. Thank you. And I just went to go leave. And as I'm walking away, she goes, well, how about 15? I think it was a little bit of pity. I felt bad, so I did pay her the 15. 15 bucks for all these, I think is a pretty good deal. Not the best deal, but a pretty good one. So these last two comic books I want to show you were a product of me hunting at yard sales with a buddy of mine named Andy. He's actually appeared on my channel in the past. He's an older guy. I helped sell his comic book collection. I actually got a Hulk 181 out of it. Yeah, he's a really cool guy. You know, we've actually become friends since I helped him sell those comic books. And one of the things that kind of came out of it is that we both like the same things, not just comics, but we like collecting antiques. We like going to flea markets and yard sales. And Andy said to me way back then, after we sold the comic books, he was kind of sad. He's like, well, can we hang out some more? Can we like go to more things together? I'm like, anytime, man. So what he does is when he's not like buying, like storage units, he'll do research on local estate sales and yard sales. And he'll call me up. He's like, hey, what are you doing tomorrow? Do you want to like drive around together? Sure. I'm kind of his muscle. Like when he finds big stuff, I have to lift it for him. But it's really cool to pal around with him. I made a friend out of the whole thing. I was out with him going to places, and you saw this comic book in the footage. I found it kind of like in an old barn sale at a farm. And it's this. So this is Jungle Action featuring the Black Panther, number 23. It's from 1976, written by Roy Thomas, interior pencils by Gene Colan, but this is mostly known for the iconic cover by John Byrne. Those of you actually that submit to CGC a lot may recognize this. It was actually one of their custom labels you could have got. I saw a lot of people throwing this on Black Panther books. But yeah, it's a cool cover. I found it with a whole bunch of Archies. The lady was asking like $1 or $2 for all of them. I think I paid $2 for this book. It's not in good shape, guys. It has tons of color breaks. It's got some water damage, although it presents great, right? It looks really good. The back cover is filthy. So again, $2. I'm happy to pick up this awesome looking book. Again, it looks great from back here. That's all I'm going to do is look at it. It's pretty neat. Yeah, I'll probably read it, right? But the last book's probably the most interesting story. You saw that I found some vintage toys. Well, a couple of them were vintage. I found 2 Space Jam toys still in the cards. Those are from the 90s. One had Sylvester, one had Bugs Bunny. Both of them had Michael Jordan. And then I found 4 Ghostbuster action figures that looked like the ones from the 80s, but they're actually from like 2020, like a retro rehash. Well, I was able to get all of those, I think, for something like $20. And the reason why I bought them, even though I'm not into toys, I know people who are, and I was actually able to trade them to a good friend of mine named Rick. Now, Rick has appeared in some of my very recent videos because he has a brand new collectible toy and comic book store. He's a really cool guy, and he will actually take, old toys and Legos that people bring in, and he's willing to trade for other things like comic books. So I brought them over to Rick. He gave me some trade value for them and said pick up something of comparable value, and I did. So I turned those toys that I found at yard sales into a Daredevil number 9. Yeah, this is Daredevil number 9 from 1965, written by Stan Lee, art by Wally Wood. And I am trying to get the first 10 Daredevil books. I really just need Daredevil number 1. However, my Daredevil number 9 I have already is in terrible condition. Well, this one's a slight upgrade. The other one's kind of falling apart. This one's actually intact, although it does have the person's name, whoever owned it right on top. Funny thing is, Rick actually knows who this guy is. He bought the collection from him. But yeah, guys, I love Daredevil. I love early Daredevil. I love Wally Wood. How could I say no to this comic book, right? Especially where I traded toys. So that's part of the name of the game, right, guys? It's not just finding comic books. You can find other things you can leverage into comic books. Case in point, recently I had a video where I found an old fly rod from the 1800s. I bought it for $10. Well, I sold that fishing rod like a week afterwards for $150. Yeah, I mean, that's the stuff I'm talking about. You don't necessarily have to find comic books. You can find other things you can leverage into comics. So I found some toys, turned it into a Daredevil number 9. That's part of the fun, guys, right? So there you go. That was my montage of hunting for comic books at yard sales over 3 different days. And I think I did pretty good. Obviously, I got a pretty good stack of comic books, including some really great ones I'm excited to read and or add to my collection. Now, how much did I spend on all of these? Well, I got to do some math here really quick. Counting the toys that I traded for the Daredevil number 9, I think I'm somewhere around like $47. So not the craziest, bestest deal, obviously, but that's not really the point. The point is this, guys. I had a ton of fun. I love doing this stuff. Like I said, I went to over 50 yard sales. I found lots of stuff that are not comic book related, that aren't worth entering into this discussion on top of this. So I had a great time, got some great reading material, stuff to add to my collection. It's the thrill of the hunt. It's the thrill of the chase. I absolutely love doing it, and that's worth its weight in gold. Definitely worth more than $47 to me. But head on down to the comments. Let me know what you think of all the footage. Let me know what you think of the pickups. Which one do you like best? And do you think I paid a fair price? And like I said, guys, this is what I got from going to 50 yard sales. Just keep at it. If you go to 100 yard sales, you never know what you're going to dig up. That's it, guys. Keep hunting for comic books in strange and unusual places like yard sales. Thank you so much for watching. I'll see you guys next time.